The story begins high in the unforgiving wilderness of Black Pine Ridge during the harsh winter of 1878. Eleanor Whitmore, a 32-year-old widow, lives alone with her young son Caleb in a rough wooden cabin tucked between frozen cliffs and endless forests. 2 years earlier, her husband Thomas died in a logging accident, leaving her to survive on her own in a land where winter kills faster than bullets. Eleanor has become known among distant settlers as the Mountain Widow, a quiet but resilient woman who traps rabbits, chops wood, tends a tiny goat herd, and trades herbs in the nearest town nearly 20 miles away. Though people admire her strength, they also pity her loneliness. Caleb, only 8 years old, has grown up too quickly, helping his mother survive in ways no child should. One night, after a violent snowstorm sweeps through the mountains, Eleanor hears her dog Samson barking furiously near the frozen creek behind the cabin. Carrying a lantern through waist-deep snow, she discovers a nearly frozen man half buried beneath ice and snowdrift. His hands are blue, his beard covered in frost, and his breathing shallow. Most people in the frontier know helping strangers can be dangerous. Bandits, fugitives, and desperate drifters often wander through mountain territory. But Eleanor cannot leave a man to die. With Caleb's help, she drags the unconscious stranger into the cabin. They strip away his frozen clothes, wrap him in blankets near the fire, and spend the night trying to keep him alive. Eleanor notices scars on his arms and an old silver cross hanging from his neck. The man looks hardened by years of suffering. By dawn, the stranger finally wakes. His name is Samuel Reed. He barely speaks, exhausted and suspicious. But Eleanor learns he had been traveling through the mountains when his horse slipped near an icy pass. The horse died in the ravine, leaving Samuel stranded during the blizzard. He had wandered for 2 days before collapsing. Though weak, Samuel insists he will leave as soon as he can walk again. Eleanor senses something heavy in his past. Caleb, however, instantly admires him, fascinated by the rugged stranger with deep mountain eyes and quiet strength. For the first time in years, the cabin no longer feels empty. But none of them yet realize that Samuel's arrival will change their lives forever. Over the following weeks, Samuel slowly recovers from frostbite and exhaustion. Eleanor expects him to leave immediately once he regains strength, yet winter worsens, sealing every mountain trail under thick snow. Travel becomes impossible, forcing Samuel to remain at the cabin longer than planned. At first, Samuel keeps to himself. He repairs tools silently, chops wood before sunrise, and avoids questions about his past. Eleanor notices he wakes from nightmares some nights, gripping the silver cross around his neck as though holding onto a memory. Despite his silence, Samuel proves invaluable to the struggling family. He rebuilds the goat pen damaged during storms, repairs the leaking cabin roof, and teaches Caleb how to set stronger trap lines in the forest. Caleb begins following him everywhere, desperate for a father figure he barely remembers. Eleanor watches carefully, unsure whether trusting Samuel is wise. Frontier life taught her that survival often depends on caution. Yet Samuel never behaves dishonorably. He shares food fairly, works harder than anyone she has ever known, and treats Caleb with patience and kindness. One evening during supper, Caleb innocently asks Samuel whether he has a family. The question freezes the room. Samuel quietly reveals that years ago he had a wife and infant daughter living in Missouri Territory. During a deadly cholera outbreak, both died within days. Grief destroyed him. Unable to remain in the town filled with memories, he wandered west into the mountains, taking dangerous jobs as a hunter, guide, and laborer. After enough years alone, Samuel admits softly, a man forgets what home feels like. Eleanor sees genuine pain behind his hardened exterior. For the first time, she understands the loneliness inside him mirrors her own. As weeks pass, the emotional walls between them slowly weaken. They begin sharing evening conversations by candlelight while Caleb sleeps nearby. Samuel tells stories about distant mountain trails, hidden rivers, and the northern forests. Eleanor laughs again for the first time since Thomas died. Yet trouble quietly approaches Black Pine Ridge. A ruthless land broker named Victor Crowley has begun buying nearby properties after discovering rumors of silver deposits hidden beneath the mountains. Crowley wants Eleanor's land because a stream running through her property may lead directly to the mineral vein. Knowing widows are vulnerable, Crowley believes forcing Eleanor away will be easy. But he does not yet know someone now stands beside her. As spring slowly melts the frozen wilderness, Victor Crowley arrives at Eleanor's cabin with two armed men. Dressed in expensive coats and polished boots, Crowley offers Eleanor a small payment for her land, pretending kindness while clearly expecting obedience. Eleanor refuses immediately. Crowley warns her that surviving alone in the mountains is dangerous. He hints that accidents happen often in frontier territory. Samuel silently watches from nearby, his expression unreadable. The moment Crowley notices Samuel, tension fills the air. Crowley recognizes him. Years earlier, Samuel had worked briefly as a guide for one of Crowley's mining expeditions before leaving after discovering the businessman cheated workers and abandoned injured men during a storm. Crowley knows Samuel is stubborn enough to interfere with his plans. After Crowley leaves, Samuel finally confesses the full truth. The rumored silver vein beneath Black Pine Ridge is real. He helped locate it years ago. Crowley became obsessed with claiming the mountain ever since. Eleanor realizes her land may soon become a battlefield. Over the next month, Crowley escalates pressure against them. Supply wagons mysteriously disappear. Someone poisons two goats. One night, masked riders attempt to burn the barn, but Samuel catches them in time and drives them off with his rifle. The attacks strengthen the bond inside the cabin rather than weaken it. Samuel begins teaching Caleb how to defend the homestead properly. Eleanor notices how naturally Samuel protects them, never expecting praise. Slowly, feelings she tried to suppress begin growing in her heart. One afternoon, while repairing fences together, Eleanor asks Samuel why he risked staying when leaving would have been easier. Samuel pauses before answering. Because this is the first place in years that feels worth fighting for. The words stay with Eleanor long after sunset. Meanwhile, Crowley prepares one final move. Unable to intimidate Eleanor legally, he hires armed men to seize the property by force before government officials can investigate ownership claims. A violent confrontation becomes inevitable. The attack comes during an early spring snowstorm. Just before dawn, Samuel notices horses approaching through heavy snowfall. Crowley's men surround the cabin, carrying rifles and torches. Their plan is simple. Force Eleanor and Caleb out, then claim the land abandoned. Samuel quickly barricades doors and positions Eleanor and Caleb safely inside the cellar. He arms himself with Thomas Whitmore's old rifle while snow lashes violently against the cabin walls. The battle that follows is brutal and desperate. Gunfire echoes across the mountains as Samuel defends the homestead almost single-handedly. Years surviving the wilderness made him skilled, patient, and fearless. He uses the storm itself as protection, disappearing into snowdrifts and striking from darkness. Several attackers flee after realizing Samuel is far more dangerous than expected. But Crowley himself enters the fight, furious and determined to win. During the chaos, part of the barn catches fire, sending smoke rising into the white storm sky. Eleanor refuses to hide, while Samuel risks his life alone. Taking a rifle, she joins the defense beside him. Together, they protect the cabin with fierce determination born from years of hardship. At the height of the confrontation, Crowley corners Samuel near the frozen creek where Eleanor first found him months earlier. Crowley mocks him for believing he could replace the family he lost. Samuel nearly loses control in rage, but Eleanor arrives just in time. Together they overpower Crowley, who slips on the icy creek bank and falls into the rushing frozen water below. The surviving attackers flee immediately. As silence returns to Black Pine Ridge, Samuel collapses from a gunshot wound suffered during the fight. Eleanor desperately carries him back to the cabin, terrified she may lose him just as she once lost Thomas. For days, Samuel drifts between life and death, while Eleanor nurses him constantly. Finally, he awakens. The first thing he sees is Eleanor asleep beside his bed, still holding his hand. For the first time in many years, Samuel no longer feels alone. Summer arrives gently over Black Pine Ridge, transforming the once frozen wilderness into green valleys filled with wildflowers and sunlight. The danger from Crowley disappears after authorities recover documents proving his illegal schemes against settlers throughout the territory. The mountain is finally safe. Samuel fully recovers from his wound, though he now carries another scar beside countless older ones. Yet something inside him has changed completely. The bitterness and grief that once defined his life slowly fade within the warmth of Eleanor and Caleb's company. The cabin that once echoed with loneliness becomes alive with laughter, shared meals, and hope. Caleb begins calling Samuel Pa accidentally one evening while working outside. Embarrassed, the boy quickly apologizes, but Samuel kneels beside him with tears in his eyes. "You can call me that any time you want," he says quietly. Eleanor watches the moment from the porch, overcome with emotion. Months later, Samuel builds a larger barn and plants fruit trees beside the cabin, symbolizing roots he never thought he would grow again. Eleanor realizes the stranger she once dragged from the snow has become the heart of their family. One peaceful evening beside the mountains, Samuel finally gives Eleanor the silver cross he carried since losing his first family. He explains that for years he kept it as a reminder of grief. But now, he tells her, "I wanted to remind me that God can return life to a man after he thinks everything is gone." Under the fading golden sunset of Black Pine Ridge, Samuel asks Eleanor to marry him. She says yes. The widow who once believed her story ended in sorrow discovers that sometimes blessings arrive disguised as burdens. The frozen stranger she saved during a deadly storm becomes not only her protector, but the family neither of them believed they deserved again. And in the endless mountains where winter once nearly killed them both, a new life finally begins.